and welcome to Spotlight Indie's big weekend. Thank you for joining us. If you've just come straight from here from There's No Such Thing as a Stupid Question, where Graham has very incredibly proved that there is no such thing as a stupid question and helped us to do that. What we wanted to do here is just delve a little bit more into the mind of Graham Austin King. So, Graham, are you ready for this?
I'm ready. Are you ready? Because it could be messy, really.
I was born ready. I've been waiting my whole life for this chat, Graham. This is like, yeah, I am so ready for it. Viewers, are you ready? I hope so. What we're going to do is we're going to chat to Graham because he is like a living indie legend, and we're going to be able to just explore and mine his brains and see how it's done as indie creators, because you can't get better than Graham Austin King. So let us begin, first of all, by telling you why we're speaking to Graham specifically. When we originally were going to have this event live and in person, Graham was going to be our featured guest of honor, because it was all going to be tied in with Graham's Kickstarter for his book, Faye the Wild Hunt. Because we can't do that in person, that is no longer an option. However, I am very happy to say that Graham's Kickstarter was fully funded. So he's getting the 10th anniversary special editions of those books are all getting sorted, which is exceptional. So Graham, why don't you tell us a little bit about what that was like, running a Kickstarter, about this landmark you've reached of 10 years for this book that has been out there in the world. How does that feel?
It feels pretty good. The Kickstarter was incredibly stressful. That's the first one I've done. I tried it a couple of years ago, just to almost to relaunch the books, to re-edit them and just do it all over again. But there's more a celebration effort. But my God, it was so stressful. I did it over 28 days, and there's many schools of thought over what length of time you should run it for. Some people say 7 days, some say 14, what have you. And it was just manic. The plan, the plan, sadomasochistically, is to do all three of them, one after the other. But the first one's gone now, so that's good. And the proofs were ordered actually just yesterday. So in a few days, I should have it in my hot, sticky hand, and we'll see what it looks like.
That's awesome. I love it. Thinking about what, going back to when you were first launching these books and putting them out there into the world, I guess that too was probably a little bit of a manic time for you. Were you getting like flashbacks to sort of like, oh, this is what it's like to do all of something new for the first time with the Kickstarter? Was it bringing back any of those memories?
Yeah, kind of. In a weird way, it was far worse because I didn't have any expectations when I launched the books originally. The first one I launched, and I don't know, everybody who I'd ever met and everyone who'd ever met them apparently just pounced on book one. It was very successful very quickly. But the Kickstarter there's so much expectation on it, and I guess it's because it's sink or swim, right? If it doesn't fund on that 28-day point, that's it. It's not funding, it's done. Whereas you can always either relaunch a book or do some more promo, or get it out there a bit more. There are many books that have just sat in the doldrums for years and then suddenly become popular. I guess that's what Spiffbo is all about. So there's that as well. But yeah, it was not the same, and I was not prepared.
So that's actually really nice to hear for any like new indie authors. Like the experience they're going through now, like if they've run a Kickstarter, it should be a breeze for them. Like it's all good.
Yeah.
Yeah. In terms of with this being something that's sort of fairly new to you and something that you're going to be repeating with the other books, do you think that this is like a something that you're going to be incorporating into your indie life as a writer, Kickstarters? Are you going to be embracing it whole hog, or is this just kind of like just specifically for this trilogy that you're thinking?
Well, I think we're gonna suck it and see. I think the way that Kickstarters work is that you can build a devoted audience, and that people have got there's clearly a market for special editions. So my intention is to do all three of these books, and then I'd like to do at least one for Faithless as well, just because Faithless never had a hardcover, and it would look amazing. So yeah, that'd be cool. if I was organized, I'd be doing these things in line and then bringing out the sequel to Faithless or the sequel to the Riven Weird saga. We'll see how organized I can be. I'm not great at organization like that, so we'll see.
That's epic. That's so cool. What was it that sparked this idea of like, let's write a book, let's put it out there in the world? Can you remember that far back? Because you've been doing it for a long time now.
I mean, yeah. I started writing Wild Hunt would have been, I think, 2012 or 13. And I pumped that out incredibly quickly. I finished that book in less than 6 months.
Wow.
I think I was, at the time, I was staying home with the kids. My wife was at work. I was staying home with the kids and they slept a lot. So while they were sleeping, I was writing. But I don't want to say it was the early days of KDP and indie publishing, because it wasn't certainly for indie publishing. It might have been for KDP. And it's changed an awful lot since then. The process of getting a book out there and getting it noticed maybe it was easier. I think it was a bit more novel. People hadn't run into the notion of independent publishing outside of things like Vanity Press. So moving past that stigma and moving past that sort of label was a challenge. But once you've done that, people were like, "Oh, right. So so you're the publisher? How does that work then? Where can I find these books? Can I get them in bookshops? Can I get it on Amazon? Right. Okay, cool." And Kindle at the time was still taking off and really starting to make its mark on the market. So maybe I had an easier time of it then. I think there are far more indie authors trying to get out there now. And I think there's far more books out there now. There's something crazy like 1 million books a week are published on Amazon. So it's much harder.
Yeah. Have you noticed that that's been sort of, we thinking about how things were back then versus how things are now for people trying to break out? Do you think that the changes that you've seen over the industry, the independent world, even since 2012, 2013, are you, how would you feel now if you were going to sit down and write your debut book, knowing what you know about the industry? Do you think, would you still have that same kind of passion for it as you did back then, do you think?
I think I still have the passion for it because I think that they're separate things. The passion for writing the book and actually producing it is completely separate to getting out there in the universe and hoping that more than 3 people buy it. The goal for just about every author, I would have said, is to actually make enough money from it that they can do what they enjoy, which is write. So it's tied into it. You have to market, you have to sell the books. Otherwise, why are you doing this? Who can afford to spend that much time doing it? But yeah, it's definitely changed. Certainly with indie publishing, actually that's not true. With all publishing, it's irrevocably tied in with marketing and with social media. Facebook, for instance, has changed massively. Twitter's not even called Twitter anymore. It's all shifted, and it is far harder than it used to be because you don't have that same sort of organic reach that you could have before. You can't just put a post out there and have people that you've never interacted with or even that have even heard of you find your post. They've monetized it too much.
Do you think that you would have been more daunted, do you think, releasing like the first book, had you known that 10 years on you're going to have to learn all of these different skills, you're going to have to become resilient, you're going to have to run your Kickstarter, like it's a lot, right?
I am the worst example because everything that you could possibly do wrong, I did wrong. I don't know that I would survive if I did it now because the bar has shifted. The quality is so much higher. The expectation is so much higher to the extent that, we've got indie authors using the same editors as traditional published authors. It's the same people doing it. It's the same copy editors, it's the same proofreaders, and a lot of times it's the same cover artists as well. So in an effort to move beyond that stigma of Vanity Press, we've really upped the quality level, and coming in and that on the ground floor now, I think would have been a bit of a shock to the system.
Yeah, definitely. No, it's I'm so glad that you've been able to have that experience of seeing the shift in the landscape over the past 10 years, because I think authors who have been writing and been indie writing for a long time, you are in such a great position for your next book. And it's all fantasy, right? All of your works are fantasy inspired. So I want to talk to you about fantasy and the way that you blend genres within fantasy. It's because your books are very difficult to pin down into just one genre. So tell us a little bit about sort of, what when you're writing, what kind of stories come to you, and what is it you love about those stories?
Um, I mean, firstly, you're making the assumption that I know what I'm doing. Plot, particularly, my wife plots, Alicia plots like very, very well. But for me, it's just an exercise in futility. I can spend 3 days plotting, and then I'll start writing, and it just goes completely off left field. So it's just a waste of time. I don't think I particularly write. I mean, I do write fantasy, but the goal is not to write a fantastical story. The goal is to write a story about people that we can then relate to. Now, that happens to be in a fantasy setting because it gives me more free reign to fuck around and deal with crazy things. I generally deal with a central concept and then just go with it. So with the Riven Weird saga, it was about the concept of an ancient adversary returning to a world which is completely forgotten about them. There's nothing about them and thinks they're just a myth. That was fun to play with because you get to play with the notion of myth and folklore and fairy tales and how it's all poo-pooed and so on and so forth. With Faithless, the concept I was playing with there was the notion of gods and religion, and how what's the god getting out of this, and how does that all work, and can mankind betray the person betray the deity that it's supposed to be worshipping. And then Prometheus was an experiment. Prometheus was just me messing around to see what I could do. And I think I wrote 3 chapters in third person and then shifted back to first person, which I'd never written in before. And I was just going nuts on that one. But that's set in this world, which was again a massive shift from what I'd written before. I'm losing the challenge here that we were talking about.
It's all right. Holly will edit out all the ums, or she'll put them all together at the end. I'm sure it'll be fine.
Yeah. Excellent. Great 5 minutes of
Yeah.
I think I much prefer to write in second world than in this world, because you've got less constraints and you can do whatever you like. It also gives you the ability to play with the world itself, with how everything, the geography works, and how the climate works, with how magic in that world works. If you're dealing with this world, you've really got to focus on. I live in fear of Comic Store Guy from The Simpsons. Right? I live in fear that at some point someone's going to come up to me and go, "Actually, that gun doesn't work like that." Which has happened, to be fair. So I tend to put in a ridiculous amount of research, to the extent that people think that I know how to smith and think I used to be in the military, and I don't know how to do either of those things. And then I will write it as far as the book goes, and then as soon as the book's finished, it just falls out the side of my head. So that's how my writing brain works.
I think that's so relatable, though, because the stories exist in our brains and then we translate them onto the page, and that is a process of translation. But once they are there, it's like that thought has been expressed. That idea is now, it has its own life on the page.
Yeah.
So it's not gonna stay here forever, because it's out. It's you've done your job. What intrigues me is that you set out to explore a concept, or to make something relatable, and you don't set out for fantasy. And that to me is really interesting when you're exploring secondary worlds, because I think a lot of people will get into fantasy writing because they want to explore a fantasy world. But what, in your experience, doing it the other way around, what has been the advantages of that? As opposed to sort of sitting down and going, right, okay, I want to set this in this world, and I want it to be this type of magic and this type of thing first. What advantages do you get as a storyteller from focusing on the concept?
by focusing on the concepts, for me at least, it gives me the ability to just let my imagination have free reign. Like I said, I don't particularly plot. So most of the time, especially conversations, when I'm writing conversations, I have no idea what the next person, what the person our character is talking to is about to say, or how I'm going to react to that. I'm as much surprised by what's going on as the person eventually reading the book. And the same thing happens with world building with me. What tends to happen is about 2/3 of the way through the book, I'll have an absolute crisis of concept and have to go back all the way through it and make sure that everything makes sense and lines up and actually works. But Faye, for example, I had a big thing going on with the cycles of the moon, with the moon phases. So unless it's the right moon phase, then things aren't going to happen without throwing too many spoilers out. And that only occurred to me about 2/3 of the way through the first book that I was doing that. And then I had to suddenly go back and make sure that I had actually done it, because it was like, oh, that's cool. You like that? That works. Shit, have I done that properly all the way through? Or have I just done it for this chapter? So stuff like that. But yeah.
I think you'll find on page 283 it was a waning gibbous. That's the yeah. No, it's all good. It's all good. I think that's one of the things, though, isn't it? When you're in a secondary world, is that it gives you freedom to play. Having played for so long, how do you keep that invention going? Because, like, for example, when I play games with my son, it's great when you hit on something new, but when it's the same game that you play over and over and over again, it gets stale. So how do you keep the act of playing in these worlds fresh?
Well, I think, unpopular opinion, I don't think we want fresh. I don't.
Ooh.
I think what we want is something that's close enough to familiar that we already know that we like, tropes, for example, but we want a slight variation on it. So Robin Hobb, for example, with her Realm of the Elderlings saga, I think it's called, did the most amazing thing with dragons. But we all knew they were dragons. Now, if you changed the name, we'd have still figured out that they were dragons. But if you twisted it just a little bit further, then it would just be some weird creature that we don't know what it is, and no one's particularly interested in that. So it was the same thing when I wrote the Riven Weird saga with the Fae. Most people have an idea of what Fae are to a point. But I took out all the romantic elements, which is rife throughout fantasies. Is, you hear Fae, you think, sexy times. That's not what my books are about. No, no, you're not going to get any of that. Sorry. But tied in with that is the notion that they're not human, that they're a bit alien, that they're not necessarily particularly nice, that they've got their own agenda, that they're not from this world, and there's a whole bunch of other things tied in with it. It was a massive playground that I could fool around with. But it's got to be familiar. Otherwise, your audience is just not interested.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I think I've thought often about this idea of subversion, and about how, if you are just going for pure subversion, you're not actually giving people what they want, because they want to see something that is then subverted, and it's like they want the familiar as well as the subversion. It's like you've got to harmonize both together, otherwise you're just gonna like knock people off, because they're going to be like, well, this isn't what I came for, this isn't what I expected. So
yeah, I mean, it's like when Grimdark became popular. And I almost said that when Grimdark first started, but that's a whole separate can of worms, so we'll leave that one alone. But it became popular, and people were reading this style of book for the first time and realized that actually their hero in the book wasn't necessarily a nice guy. That it's the twist on the trope, isn't it? Because it's the twist on the farmer's son destined to be a hero, what have you. Actually, it turns out to be a bit of a sod, and he's just a terrible person. And tied in with that is the expectation for the happy ending as well. So these are all things that we play with, but the expectation when the reader's picking up the book, initially at least, is that, this is, I can look at this and I know the structure of most stories. I know where it's going to take me. I know he's probably not going to die. There's going to be a happy ending. There's going to be a resolution once we get past all these challenges, and so on and so forth. And subverting that is a great deal of fun.
definitely. Also, top marks on the fact that we're talking about a farmer's son and you call him a sod, which is farming pun.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that is so professional,
Not
Graham.
on purpose.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, 10 points go your way. Um, in terms of this idea then of taking something, playing around with it, that being sort of the why, as to writing, and that being the part of the fun. How much work have you had to put into the craft then of, okay, I've played around with this and now it's my turn to make it into something that people will enjoy reading? What have you done over your career to sort of enhance your craft of storytelling?
Um, that's a good question. Hopefully, I have. I think firstly, reading. Don't ever stop reading. Don't ever stop reading other people's work and read different genres and just expand your imagination and your enjoyment of that. So it will come naturally through there. Secondly, I think that you learn an awful lot by just doing. Um, I learned so much grammar, which is so boring, but oh my god, you sit down and you start to write, you suddenly realize you have no idea where all these little squiggly dots and things go, and you actually have to sit down and work this stuff out. But I mean, I remember swapping books with another writer, and she was telling me that I was head hopping all over the place, and I don't know what the hell head hopping is, and point of view shifts, and so on and so forth. I mean, there are a lot of people out there that take the study of writing very seriously, and they talk about story arcs and character arcs and so on and so forth. I know how to do that stuff, but I know how to do it because I've done it wrong the first time and I've had to work my way through it and figure it out. I've never studied creative writing in an academic sense, unlike many other writers that I know. That doesn't necessarily make me better or worse than them, but it's a learning process. And I think that the second you stop learning is the second that you'll probably dry up. So you've got to keep expanding.
Yeah, absolutely. If there's anything that keeps things fresh, it's that process of learning, isn't it? I think writers are the best learners
Mm.
because every time that I speak to a writer, they'll tell me about something new that they've discovered. And it's like, wow, it's amazing. When it comes to the future of indie writing and your future in the indie writing, where do you see sort of what changes? You've seen lots of changes in your career
Yeah.
so far. What changes are you anticipating? What are you expecting for the future of your sort of like your next books now, but maybe your next books 5 years, 10 years from now?
Oh God, I have no idea. I think a lot of it is going to be external to me. I think that the marketplace, in terms of the platforms that we use, is shifting. Um, I think that certainly since I started, physical bookshops are more willing to take on indie books and not look at them as just vanity press because we've moved beyond that a bit. So hopefully that's going to continue. Um, in terms of my own writing, that's hopefully I can just keep writing, keep pumping the books out there, which I'm aware it's been a while since I've put one out, but the goal is just to keep doing it and keep on keeping on, I guess.
Yeah, that's awesome. You mentioned that you first were writing Faye when the kids were sleeping.
Mm.
Have the kids reached an age whereby you've let them read the books that you wrote when they were sleeping?
Um, yes and no. So two of them have attempted to read it. I think my daughter, um, she's 15 now, has read most of the first one, but she's not continued with it. So I don't think she's quite old enough for it all.
Mm.
But and I mean, it's a ridiculous thing because I think back to what I was reading at that age, and I thought twice about letting her read it because I'm privately horrified. Uh, but then I was like, when I was 15, I was reading It and all manner of stuff by Stephen King and things that would horrify my parents, I'm sure, if they'd known at the time. But, you know, so yeah, she has read it. She hasn't read all of it. Hopefully she'll go back to it at some point. But she's got an interesting, she's definitely a fantasy fan. So that's cool.
Yeah, that is
We'll
cool.
see.
It's nice when you can geek out with them, right?
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Is it strange and bizarre, sort of you seeing her reading a copy of it, thinking I remember when I was penning this and you were like, it must be strange sort of
It
having that
is, but I've
longevity.
also got the memory of a goldfish. So, I mean, I have to reread my own stuff because I will forget what's in there and how things work. Now, I mean, to be fair to me, it was like more than 10 years ago when I wrote that first book.
Mhm.
But yeah, I can forget stuff incredibly quickly. And like I said earlier, what I'll do is I'll research stuff and stick it in there, and I'll know all the mechanics of how you make a forge fire and what kind of coal you need and so on and so forth. And the next day, I know nothing. It's
Yeah.
gone.
Yeah, it's good. So I bet that will be an interesting question, when she gets to the age whereby she's really into it and she comes to you with all of the questions of, well, what about this and what about this and these are my theories, and you're like,
Maybe the next chapter, maybe it's in there.
No, that's great. That's great. In terms of the books that you are sort of getting inspired by, because you mentioned about reading as being something that is
Yeah.
helped you in your craft. What kind of books are coming out now that you're looking at and that you're saying, right, okay, yeah, this is the kind of book that I want to be reading when it comes to the kind of books that I want to be writing next? Has there been any standouts for you, especially from like the indie world?
Um, I haven't read, to be honest, I haven't read much indie stuff lately. Although, to be fair, I think that I've just gone through the Dungeon Crawler Carl books,
Oh,
which
yeah.
I'm pretty sure were indie when they started. I don't think they are now, but I'm pretty sure they're indie when we started putting them out. And it's just a nice, fun departure from the super serious fantasy, and it's nice to see him, well, writers in general, smashing through walls of expectation and the laws of what you can write and what you can't write, and how your book has to present itself, and so on and so forth. And really, there are no rules, not really. They're there, but they're paper walls. You can just break through it if you want to. So that was cool. I enjoyed that. Um, I have a couple of books that I read habitually that I will go back to every couple of years, if not sooner. I don't know why. Something about the writing of both of them. They're very different. One of them is Andy Weir's The Martian, not the film, but the book. And I will read that. I think, again, it's the irreverent tone of it is quite fun to look at. And he breaks a lot of the rules of writing when he's messing around with that. And the other one, I read The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss a lot. Mostly because it's got some really beautiful writing in there, but also the structure of the story, if you look at that first book, is interesting because it just meanders. It almost feels, and I don't know, I've no idea if he plotted it out or not, but it does just sort of pants it, which is nice to see.
I love it. Great recommendations for anybody who's not read those books. That is like, yeah, they are absolute bangers when it comes to just what you can learn from two completely different types of storytelling. And again, people who read your books, there'll be so much to learn about a whole other type of storytelling again. So thank you so much for delving into your work with us and for giving us just a bit of advice as well as to what it takes to make it, the flexibility that's needed in the indie world, the ways to get better, the passion you still have and you still need to have for the storytelling. And it's been a really lovely chat, Graham, and I appreciate it. And thank you for joining us. And we hope that everybody who's watching has got something out of it. Graham, tell everybody where they can find you if they want to find out more.
My website is the first stop, so grahamaustenking.com is easy enough to find. Google me if you can't do that. That's simple enough. But all of my books are on Amazon. 4 of my books are on Audible, and any bookshop can order them in.
Amazing. And stay tuned on Spotlight Indie's big weekend, because coming up next at 9 o'clock, we are going to be launching a book with Phil Parker. So we will see you then. And thank you, Graham. And enjoy the celebrations for 10 years for the Kickstarter and getting the copy in your hand.
Yeah, thank you.